So I'm going to call our meeting to order. And Mr. Poland, will you note that all commissioners are present?
Noted.
The first item on our agenda is approval of our minutes from the June 19 meeting. Do I have a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right. Going to turn to Gabe for discussion of our first official action here.
Commissioners, staff recently updated and reviewed our natural gas interruptible and transportation rate structures, and I want to introduce Sherry Auditor, Manager of Rates, to give you some proposed changes for your consideration.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. As Mr. Bolas just mentioned, after last winter, we did review our natural gas rate schedules for interruptible and transportation services. And so today we have 3 recommendations to bring to you. Currently, we have 2 transportation schedules, and our first recommendation is that we reduce that to just a single offering. And we are also proposing to increase the penalty rate for unauthorized gas use and also to remove a standby gas provision. So I have several slides, and we'll go into a bit more detail on each of these recommendations. Transportation customers do not purchase their natural gas commodity from KUB. They only utilize our distribution services. So what they will do is they will go out to a supplier, make a contract for that supplier to deliver natural gas to Knoxville on their behalf. KUB's role then is to receive that gas and move it from the pipeline just across KUB's distribution system. So again, they're not purchasing from us. Our role is just the distribution system role. So, excuse me. So in doing this, some distribution companies have a situation in which it is meaningful for them to differentiate that transportation service that is occurring on the distribution level. In KUB's situation, our system is very robust, and in looking at this, we have determined that we really only need to offer a single transportation rate in the future. So to transition to this, we would first propose closing the G12 firm transportation schedule to any new participants as of this November. And then we would also propose waiting 2 years before we close it permanently. There are currently 3 customers receiving G12 service, so a 2-year waiting period would provide these customers with the time to evaluate the other gas rate offerings that are available to them, and then also to notify their supplier if necessary. We would also, just as a housekeeping issue, we would rename the G11 schedule to transportation service. The second recommendation that we have is to increase the unauthorized gas penalty. So this penalty, unlike our other rates, which are structured to recover cost, a penalty rate exists for the sole purpose of encouraging compliance. This rate has been in place since 1982, and it's currently $15. Again, it only applies to unauthorized gas. Unauthorized gas is when KUB is in a period of restriction. The gas supplies that we have are dedicated to first to customers who are purchasing their gas from KUB, and also to customers who are paying for firm service. So while an interruptible customer is purchasing their gas from KUB, they have at their option the ability to contract for a portion of their load to be firm. Some of them choose 0, some of them choose a small amount. So in that situation, those customers can take up to their firm contractual amount, but any gas that they consume on those restricted days above that amount is unauthorized. And then similarly with the transportation customers, any gas that they consume above what their supplier has delivered for them is unauthorized. And so that unauthorized penalty is incurred on top of the cost of the gas itself.
And am I correct in assuming that if they sign up for interruptible service, they also get a better rate?
Yes.
So this is, in a way, is just bringing it back up to what And in fact, was this calculated, was the $25, is there a rationale for that number? Does that actually make us whole as if they were paying full freight?
Well, there is a rationale to that number, but what we do, the $25 is a penalty. So when those customers take the unauthorized gas, there are two components to that unauthorized charge. One component is that they do pay us for the gas itself, and that's what keeps us whole. And then the penalty is just on top of that to be a deterrent, to not make it easy to make that decision to take the unauthorized. And we did benchmark the 25 against the cost of fuel oil, because that is a backup supply that several of our customers use. So,
And I do recall, we had, this happened when we were trying to restrict because of the incident on the pipeline last year. But don't I recall that until that happened, it had been a number of years since there had been the need to restrict?
there was a period in which we did not restrict for many, many years. In more recent history, we might restrict 3 or 4 days out of the year. What we are seeing on the pipeline is that their required maintenance has been increasing and increasing.
Okay.
So when the pipeline places a restriction on us, then we oftentimes have to, in turn, put that restriction on our customers.
Okay.
When it was very cold back in January of 2017, I think we were under restriction for 20-something days.
Okay.
We only restricted our customers maybe 2 or 3 days during that time. So it's very much, there's a situational analysis that occurs for us to determine if we need to restrict or not.
Okay, thank
So,
you.
So again, our recommendation is to increase this to penalty portion to $25. And then finally, our third item is really just a housekeeping issue. Both transportation schedules include a provision for something that we refer to as standby gas. This was something put in place in the event that we could find supply during these difficult restricted times. To date, we have not been able to utilize that provision, and including it in the rate schedule may create a little bit of confusion for our customers, so it is our recommendation to go ahead and remove that provision. So just to recap, again, looking at increasing the unauthorized gas penalty, and that could potentially impact up to 28 customers across 3 different rate schedules. And then also to eliminate that standby gas provision. And then finally, to close the G12 rate schedule to any new participants, and then to permanently close it in 2 years in favor of a single transportation rate. And that G12 closure will impact 3 customers. These customers, we have communicated with them and also with their suppliers, so they are aware of our proposal and that there may be potential board action on this issue.
What's the amend name, Colin?
What we're going to amend to?
Well, I mean,
Amend the name. The G11 schedule is currently called interruptible transportation service, and it will just become transportation service. And so Resolution 1400 provides for the necessary updates to the rate schedules based on these 3 recommendations. And then it also provides for the closure of the G12 rate schedule by November 2021. And because this is a rate action, it will require 2 readings before it could be effective. So any additional questions?
All right, so this is Resolution 1400, a resolution amending the rate schedule of the gas division, providing for certain changes to the gas interruptible and transportation rate schedules by amending Section 2 of Resolution number 1060 as heretofore amended. We need a motion and a second for Resolution 1400, and this will be first reading.
So moved.
Second. All right, are there any members of the public who wish to comment on this resolution? If not, Mr. Cully, will you please call the roll?
Commissioner Askew,
aye.
Commissioner Hamilton,
Aye.
Commissioner Herbert,
Aye.
Commissioner Pennell,
Aye.
Commissioner Simpson-Brown,
Aye.
Commissioner Small,
Aye.
Commissioner Worden.
Aye.
Resolution 1400 is passed on first reading.
Commissioners, historically, we have worked with our utility districts that border us when there are customers that have water and wastewater services from different utilities. We have such a situation we want to discuss with you today, and I want to introduce Mark Rahuff, Manager of Engineering New Service, to discuss an area where we want to look at cleaning that up a little bit.
Commissioners, today's resolution is an outcome from a new development that's being planned at 8512 Kingston Pike. And this is just west of North Gallagher View Road. And during the purchase of this property, the developer found out that there is a private pump station that exists on their property, and also determined that there are 5 properties around this pump station that are served by this private pump station. And those customers have a private wastewater system that does that. So that was not a good thing for him to find out, probably. But in doing so, he contacted KUB, and we also talked to FUD because this is a boundary location for us and FUD. And today, that pump station pumps that wastewater through a private force main, and it does tie into a KUB manhole here at 8420 Kingston Pike. And so they are currently KUB wastewater customers because of that. And the other customers, all these properties shown in yellow, actually are KUB wastewater customers, but they are served water by FUD. So they have 2 providers at this location. One other thing of note is this is also a location where we have an interconnection meter, the water meter, that allows us to send water between our systems, between FUD and KUB, so that in emergency situations where you need water, extra water, you can get help from your neighbor utility. So we have these interconnects at different locations with our other surrounding utilities to help each other out. And so that's a location for this as well. So as part of this, the developer asked if we could do something to help this situation. And so we've worked with FUD, closely and talked to them, and come up with what we think is a good plan, and that's what this resolution does. The plan consists of a new pump station being constructed at this location and a new force main. FUD will work with the developer to construct that, and those facilities will then be owned and operated by FUD. So FUD will now own those facilities. This existing gravity system that's privately owned today, FUD has inspected that and determined it's in good enough condition for them to take over. And so now they will acquire those facilities and they will be operating this area. To do that, KUB will transfer these 5 wastewater customers to FUD, and they will become FUD wastewater customers. In exchange, these customers shown in blue that are currently split in service, the water customers will now be transferred to KUB. And so that's going to happen. And then there is a water line that's in Kingston Pike that FUD currently owns that services these customers. KUB will also be acquiring that as part of this resolution. KUB has also agreed to move this meter interconnect from this location to a new location here, and this will result in a new boundary between KUB to the east. So any customer to the east of that boundary will have water, wastewater provided by KUB. Any customer to the west will be FUD service. In summary, this resolution exchanges 5 wastewater customers, transfers them from KUB to FUD. FUD will replace that private pump station and operate the new station and own it. 6 new water customers will be transferred from FUD to KUB, along with that 850-foot section of water main. And KUB will move that interconnection point to the new boundary, and that's to be done. We've contacted all 11 customers in the area, so they are aware of the transfer, and they will work with them on schedule. That's not been established yet, but hopefully by the end of the calendar year we can make all this happen. But those customers have been talked to, and they understand that there will be some rate differences between the utilities, but they're aware of the need for the transfer. So this resolution 1401 authorizes the transfer and the exchange of KUB water wastewater facilities and service rights between KUB and FUD. And it authorizes the execution of any documents needed for the exchange, and also authorizes actions necessary to accomplish the exchange. Any questions?
What's the financial impact of this resolution?
There is really no financial money changing hands. They're going to take care of the pump station itself.
You have to then construct the interconnect, right?
We're going to take care of the interconnect construction. They're going to handle the construction. FUD is going to pay for the construction of the pump station and force main. The developer is having to pay for some of that as well. So FUD is going to take care of that portion. KUB will participate in that. And we have offered to move that metering location to the new site to clean up this boundary so that we both have water wastewater service.
But there's a cost to moving that.
Each utility is, I think it's around $40,000,
$40,000.
has a project to do to make this happen, and it's about equivalent cost on both sides for their respective projects.
All right. So this is Resolution 1401, a resolution authorizing the execution of an agreement with First Utility District for the exchange and transfer of water distribution facilities and water and wastewater service rights in the Kingston Pike, Gallagher View area. We'll need a motion and a second, and this is first and final reading.
So moved.
Second.
All right, are there any members of the public who wish to comment on this resolution? If not, Mr. Cully, will you do a roll call, please?
I will. Commissioner Askew.
Aye.
Commissioner Hamilton.
Aye.
Commissioner Herbert.
Aye.
Commissioner Fennell.
Aye.
Commissioner Simpson Brown.
Aye.
Commissioner Small.
Aye.
Commissioner Worden.
Aye.
Resolution 1401 passed on first and final reading.
All right, thank you. Now I'll recognize Dave for the president's report.
Commissioners, I'd like to recognize Mark Walker. We're going to let him do two presentations today. First of all, as you know, we have just did a sale of bonds recently, and he wanted to update you on the results of those bond sales. Secondly, as you know, we are preparing for the long-range plans. At the time of year we start really working hard on long-range planning and the next series of rate increases. Mark has some details about that, and I want to give you a preview of that information. So, Mark.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I do want to start off by giving you the results of the recent sale of bonds. You may recall last May, the board authorized the issuance of long-term revenue bonds in several systems to help fund our utility system capital improvements for the current fiscal year. We sold the bonds a few weeks ago, and as you might expect, given the interest rate environment, we did quite well on that. So we have some good news for you all, for KUB and our customers. On July 29th, through competitive sale, taking bids, we sold two series of bonds totaling $36 million. That included $20 million in water system bonds and $16 million in wastewater system bonds. And again, those will fund wastewater and water system capital improvements respectively. Each series of bonds of the two mature over a period of 30 years. That's consistent with our long-range plan when we issue debt over a 30-year period. The payback structure is levelized, which means the same amount is paid back each year, though the combination of principal and interest will vary, much like a home mortgage would have the same type of setup on that. We had a lot of interest in the bonds, as you might expect. We received a total of 10 bids on the water bonds and 11 bids on the wastewater bonds, and as a result, we got some good rates. And as it turned out, each series of bonds, the low-cost bid was the same at 2.785% from different investment firms, but the same bid. And you can see, compared to the budgeted rate of interest, which was 4%, we save over 120 basis points. And that interest rate savings alone totals $8.4 million over the life of the bonds for both water and wastewater. I think water's 4.7, wastewater 3.7 million. So that's good. We're pleased to be able to achieve that. But that's not the end of the savings. We actually, because of some factors I'll talk about in a moment, were able to downsize the original planned bond issues. Issue lower in water, issue lower in wastewater, and actually take out or eliminate the electric bond issue. So back in May, the board actually authorized $63 million in total bonds to be issued. We sold $36 million. Starting with wastewater, we had some savings that we were able to achieve at the end of FY19. We were able to reduce that to $16 million. Water, we had some savings also. We also were able to, are deferring some capital work on some projects out a fiscal year or so. So we reduced that to $20 million. And then electric, we did have some cash savings on that, but the big factor on electric was once we closed out the fiscal year, we looked at our monthly cash flow for several years in our long-range plan and really determined that what the bond issue was solving was a potential cash shortfall for a couple of months. And that's not what you use a long-term bond issue for. Much like we've done in the gas system in the past, we would issue a short-term revenue anticipation note instead, and at a fraction of the cost of interest because you only need it for a month or so. And that was the solution for this. Once we realized that, we were able to eliminate that. We'll probably come back to the board sometime in the next 6 months and request the authorization for that line of credit. But by doing that, we're able to knock out $12.5 million in interest cost over a 30-year period, over the life of the bond, or what would have been the life of the bonds, but that goes away. And so that's beneficial and that's going to help, and we'll talk about that in a few moments as well. So if you look at the total savings from the interest rate differential and from downsizing, it's $26.1 million. Granted, that's over 30 years, but still a decent portion of that is in our long-range plan, and in particular for our electric system, that can help in future rate management. So that's a big deal. Now, I'll try and get through these next slides fairly quickly. We are required to show this information to the board by the state comptroller. We did receive 10 bids for the water bonds. You can see the names of the various investment firms that bid on the bonds. The low-cost bid, again, was 2.785%, went to Citigroup Global. And one thing that's interesting, if you see the difference between the low and the high bid, it's only about 9 basis points. So very competitive, very narrow. And you know, the more bids you get and more like that, the better rates you're going to get. So that was good. Our water bond profile. So where do we stand on our water bonds in total? This $20 million issue raises our total outstanding water debt to $213 million. We're scheduled to pay $7 million down in March of 2020. It's part of our scheduled repayment of debt. So we'll end the fiscal year with $206 million. That translates to a debt ratio of 51%. A little bit above our target, but that's going to trend down over the course of the long-range plan. And we will pay 38% of the $213 million, which is $81 million over the next 10 years. Our debt management policy that the board approved requires that so much be paid over the following 10-year period. So that is in compliance. That's water. Wastewater, 11 bids. The low-cost bid was First Tennessee Financial Markets at the same rate. And again, here you see the spread is even narrower with 11 bids, on less than 7 basis points between the low and the high bid. But the bonds were awarded to First Tennessee Financial. Our wastewater bond profile, we now have $528 million in outstanding wastewater bonds. We will repay $14 million in April of 2020, so we'll end the current fiscal year at $514 million. That does translate to a debt ratio of 60% at fiscal year end. I'll point out that is a high water mark. Over the course of the long-range plan, which we will talk to the board about in more detail in coming months, that is going to trend down. We have committed to the board that that will be below 50% by 2028, and our plan does carry out that projection. And then 30%, or about $158 million, will be repaid in the next 10 years, and that's wastewater. Professional fees, the fees that we incur from various firms associated with the sale of the bonds. total $211,000 for this particular sale of the $36 million. You can see it listed by the various firms that are part of the transaction, our financial advisor, bond counsel, the rating agencies. Again, total $211,000, that's 0.6%, so 60 basis points on the par value of the bonds, which is consistent with prior transactions. It's also very competitive when we compare with the city of Knox County and other issuers in the state. And these fees right here are established in accordance with contracts that we have in place with both of those firms. So those are the professional fees. So good news, I think about, compared to what's in our plan, quite a bit of savings over time, in particular for the electric system. Any questions on the bond sale? Okay. I want to talk just a few minutes about rates. As we all well know, the last in the series of 3 rate increases the board approved in 2017 has gone into effect for water and wastewater in July, will go into effect for electric and gas in October, and that will complete that. So, in preparation for discussions with the board later this year about the next series of potential rate increases and looking at our Century 2 programs, how we'll fund the Century 2 programs going forward, we have been refining, updating our long-range plans for each of our utility systems. And that has resulted in a new rate forecast for the next 3 years. And it is, I think, good news based upon some O&M savings from the prior plan and some targeted capital savings in several of our systems. We've been able to eliminate and significantly reduce some previously scheduled rate increases. And we'll talk more about that in coming months. We want to go ahead and share that with you today. So what are we talking about? Our new rate forecast, no electric rate increases for the next 2 fiscal years. So no rate increase for electric in 2020 and 2021. This will mark the first time in about a decade, or since we started Century 2, that we will not need an electric rate increase to help fund the Century 2 program. For natural gas, no rate increases at all for the next 3 years. Our gas plan is probably our strongest and most financially flexible. No need for rate increases the next 3 years. Wastewater, significant reductions from what we previously scheduled for our wastewater rate increases. What we're looking at for the next 3 years is 2.25% per year, or about $1.50 for the average residential wastewater customer. That's the lowest level that we've had since the inception of the consent decree. And as we talked about previously, as we wind out of the CD, the rate increases will get lower and lower over time, and the debt will go down over time as well. So we're pleased to be able to reduce that. Also, with respect to our residential customers, the application of any rate increases that we will propose will be to the commodity charges. In other words, there will be no increase in the basic service charges for the next 3 years. They will remain at current year levels for our residential customers. And then I want to mention in particular, also important, a new rate program that we're in the process of developing for our residential and small and mid-sized commercial electric customers. Time of use rate program, where since we'll have all of our advanced meters fully deployed by 2020, we now have the technology in place to be able to offer time of use rates for our customers. And these will be optional. It'll be a pilot program to start out, but basically it'll give options to our customers that want more control over their monthly power bill, and they'll have the ability to shift their usage because you'll have rates that vary by time of day. You'll have rates during on-peak hours and rates for off-peak hours. And the rates for the off-peak hours will be substantially lower than they are for the on-peak hours, allowing those customers who want more control, who can shift their usage around to different time of day, to have potentially substantial savings on their monthly electric bill, and we're pleased to be able to offer that. It's in the process of development. There'll be more details to come later in 2019, maybe early 2020. We'll share with you the proposed structure for that, so you'll have plenty of time to look at it and consider it before it comes for a full proposal in the spring of 2020. So, and then finally, I want to mention that even though we are looking at a rate forecast that eliminates rate increases, substantially reduces other increases. This is not meant in any way to imply that we are stepping back from our commitment to Century 2 and to investing in our utility system infrastructure. That continues. Century 2 continues to be fully funded. Our grid modernization program to be fully funded. Our water plant redundancy program. Our key infrastructure initiatives will keep on. We've just been able to find ways to save money for our customers, and we want to be able to pass that on to. And looking at specifics.
Mark? Before you go on, we've got a question.
Yeah, I shut that off because
Good time.
I could see you were paying attention. How long does a typical pilot last?
It varies. I think for this, at least a year, probably. We need to learn from it. We need to educate our customer base about it. But I do think that there will be a decent amount of interest in it. So we don't want to have it limited for a long period of time. So I would say at least a year. I think once we get into it and begin to learn, we'll be able to really answer that question. But I think at the outset, hopefully no more than a year.
Great.
How will you determine this beta year, this test group of people? How would it be determined?
It'll be those that want to do it. I think we have customers today that would be interested and would sign up right away for it.
And another question on the Century 2. I've heard several forecasts that have said in past reports reviewing the past trends that we're having very little inflation in a lot of key areas right now. So do you feel like part of the ability to save has been because we've not seen that inflation in the cost of some of the
Because
services?
even in the past year, we've been able to get the work done for lower than budgeted amounts. And so yes, forecasting that to go forward is part of it. Correct.
Thank you.
Okay. So looking at the actual system rate increase percentages with our prior forecast or our prior plan compared to our new forecast, you can see specifically on electric, last year at this time we were projecting 1% per year. We're now nothing, and still the 1%. At this time we do believe the 1% will be necessary, and that would be in October of 2022, or about 3 years from now. We'll continue to monitor that, obviously, but at this time it appears it would be necessary. Gas, all going away. Water, you can see no change in our forecast on rate increases for water. Water is our oldest system, and the capital needs are, I say great, they are great. We have two major initiatives for the water system with Century 2 and our water plant redundancy initiative. There was just no means for reductions on the water system. We actually had some higher expenditures in our prior plan on both O&M and capital for water system, but they're all justified. They really are. So really no room for flexibility there. You can see the change in wastewater. At this time last year, we were looking at 3.5% per year. Now what we're seeing is 2.25. It's rounded up there, 2.3%. If you're looking at how it's going to benefit our residential customers in particular, that's in the final column on the right. And you could phrase this in a couple of ways. Customers are going to save, they're going to avoid costs. This is basically comparing what their bills would have been to what we're now projecting them to be. And you can see our residential electric customers would save $78 over that period of time, or avoid $78 in cost that they otherwise would have occurred. $36 for gas, $36 for wastewater, for a total of $150 over the 3-year period, which is significant, and we're glad to be able to reflect those savings in eliminating and reducing previously projected rate increases. And there'll be more to come on that. We'll talk in more detail later this year in 2019 about Century 2, where we see our investments going for the next decade, and where we see debt and rates going for the next decade as well. But this is our revised 3-year forecast. We think it's good news for our customers, and we wanted to go ahead and share it with you today. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I don't have a question, but I do think it's great news for our customers, and as we continue to do the work and think about who we are and who we serve, I think this is a prime example of us really looking at what we can do is to serve our customers and how we can meet their needs, but also still provide quality service. So thank you all.
Thank you.
Commissioners, as you recall, we started our construction on a new engineering building in March of 2018. That building is near completion, and so I've asked John Williams, Vice President of Construction, to give you an update on that building, which will be opening in this next month.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Commissioners. More good news. We'll just take a quick stroll down memory lane before we get in to the slideshow today. But this is the rendering that you all have seen several times that really expands the engineering and operations building, a 40-plus-year-old building, and adds this new wing for our engineering folks with the connector we'll talk about today. Just some quick highlights, refreshers. The existing engineering operations building is approaching about 300 people. Before we began this project, we're going to be shifting about 150 of the engineering staff to the new building. It has capacity for growth, but that also in turn allows for capacity in the operations building moving forward, as well as the renovations that are needed for this structure, one of which being the HVAC system inside of that. So we'll kind of walk through there. Let's first go back to really the last picture that I was able to share with you back in September of last year. After construction was going on, this is really a good time we had to kind of show what it was going to look like. The skeleton of the building is still going up, elevator shafts in the background there. And so we were proud of that project. To that point, a lot has changed, as you can imagine, in the last 11 months. So we'll just cut right to it. It's certainly a remarkable structure at this point in time. Substantial completion was in July. That doesn't mean complete completion, but they're still working through some things to get it finished up. But in all aspects, it is fairly remarkable and done with most of the landscaping also in place. So today I'm going to give you a quick tour. So I'll be your tour guide. We're going to start in the connector area here, looking back at the engineering building. Then we'll look to the south in the operations building and how we tried to mirror that. Then we'll spend just a minute on the second floor, first looking along the windows and out into the cubicle area, and then out in the courtyard, so you can kind of see how we blended the landscape plan to incorporate one main entrance into two buildings, and show how we're beginning to work on that as we enter into the next phase, which will be the operations building. We'll end on the back side of the building, which I don't think you've seen a picture of that yet, so that may be new, and then we'll talk about some next steps. So here we go. On the left is the rendering of what it was supposed to look like, and I'm proud to say that with the exception of the ladders and the trash cans, it's looking that way. They've done a really good job of building this space out, and again, showing how all that's going to be there. Again, this connector is central because the engineering and operations building has been a key fixture on our campus for so long, so splitting the buildings up was important for space. We wanted to keep them tied together because of how they work together. And so this connector will allow us to do that. The staircase and those walkways across connect each floor and also go to the back of the building as well. When you switch around, one of the things I'm more proud about actually is when you're standing on the engineering side looking back at operations, we were able to take out these panels that you'll see here of the exterior of the building and smooth those out and put in some glass areas for the new building. Those areas aren't built out yet, but in the operations building, those will also be break rooms on that side, which will mirror the break rooms on the other side. And again, just that allows that kind of central feel, main entrance where both groups can come together as well. So real proud of that as we move forward there. There's also a second floor outside area as well that will be beneficial to the folks in the operations building, especially as we return our call center and our operations center there. Just a place to be able to get out and take a breath throughout the day has a benefit for them. Let's jump into the actual work areas. This is the second floor of the building looking out along that glass mirror, that glass frame outside. One of the really stunning features of the building are these windows. We're really proud of those. That's something we unfortunately can't replicate in the operations building, but really a great feature here. This is just an example of some of the furniture we're going to place. This isn't perfectly placed at this point, but just a way to have some collaborative spaces for our folks to work outside of their cubicle areas, just to get up, move around, work together along the glass. It's going to be a great way for them to do that. And then the offices and some of the conference and collaborative spaces are on the back side of that building. If you just completely turn around 180 degrees there, you're looking back toward the cubicle areas and how those are built out. We think we've reached a really good place where we have a good height to provide privacy and an ability to concentrate on work, but also the ability to see across the entire building, and hopefully you can catch a glimpse of the windows on the back side of the building as well that allow for that. So hopefully a good environment that allows collaboration and continued work in this area. And just for reference sake, the workrooms, there's some additional conference rooms over here, and this actually goes out into a break room and then that connector area. So I'm going to pivot to the right, and we'll look out this window right here. That overlooks the courtyard and the green space. One thing I wanted to point out is this was the original main entrance into the engineering operations building. There are other entrances on other sides, but we closed this one down on purpose to draw people to this connector area. And we're also, in the next phase of the project, going to make this an outdoor area for our employees as well, another area for breaks throughout the day or whatever, just again to promote that green space. We can't give them the big windows, so we're trying to find ways of encouraging them to be able to get out and see that area. So we're real proud of this, and of course this is the entrance from the top of that ramp that goes in as the connector. We were able to add some parking here as well, and we've leveraged that quite a bit. So now moving to the back of the building, and if you have seen pictures before, then this is another one, but you may not have seen any final rendering. But this just kind of shows the glass on the back side of the connector area, that second floor balcony that comes off that will allow that and enter those areas. And this is just standing in the parking lot where our engineering inspectors and the engineering pool vehicles will be for that work. I did want to draw attention to the electric vehicle charging stations here. We had 4 on the campus before in this area. We relocated them before the project began so they can continue using those. We've added these 4 in this area for the KUB vehicles. And there'll be 4 on the other side of the building in premium parking spaces for employees and for visitors that come there as well. And there's expansion capabilities in each of these areas to grow those as needed, and we hope we can. So the project began, as mentioned, in March of 2018. A lot of work, a lot of really good work, and I just want to take just a minute to brag on some folks because it certainly wasn't us that got this done. We had a great project team. First, I want to recognize Tracy Hubbs. You've seen these before. Tracy and Doug were both graduates of our leadership development programs. They've been up here before. Tracy's acting manager of our facilities group. She came on a little bit later and is excited to get this one behind her, and also looking forward to the operations building project as well as our Fleming project that's going on right now. And Tracy's done a fantastic job with that. And I want to brag on Doug as well. Doug Reese was from our procurement area, led a group in our procurement area, was kind enough to come over and lend his skills for this project as project manager. He has really been instrumental, very detail-oriented, very thorough, and has really made this project a great success, along with our other partners with McCarty Health Staff, McCarty and Blaine. All have done a fantastic job. Doug's had a great project team behind him, but he has really done a fantastic job. So well that we're going to ask him to help us with the operations building as well, and keep that moving forward. So we really appreciate their work in this, and a lot of this is to their credit for sure. Current activities, just finishing things up. We actually got word that fire inspection was completed earlier, so that's behind us. Have really one main inspection left after we get the parking lot paved and that sort of thing ready. We feel good about that. With one final step after that, which will be obviously moving in, which we expect for the middle part of the month. And I will go back, because I didn't want to mention the building opening on August 26th. Have a ribbon cutting there, a way to kind of open that up to KUB and invite folks for that, just to see the new facility. We'll be moving in about middle of September after we get the systems commission and a few of those things. The one last step is the LEED certification, which is an important part for us. A lot of things that go into that, one of which is the construction submittals after all the construction is completed. That has to go in. We don't have a really good time frame on when we'll get feedback at this point in time. Everyone's telling me that we expect to achieve LEED certification once everything gets through. I'd love to tell you by the end of the year, we just don't know, but when we know, we'll make sure you do as well. We're hoping for good news on that. And with that, the tour is concluded. Be glad to answer any questions that you may have.
You know, with the windows, I was going to ask about energy efficiency, because I think when you have all those big windows, that you have to cool that place. It takes a lot.
It does. So yes, the windows is part of that. They're top-rated windows, but we also have some blinds, some translucent blinds that come in there as well that they can go as well to kind of help some of that. But yes, the building was designed from the beginning, including glass and everything, to be as energy efficient as it could be. So we're hopeful that will come to fruition as well. Thank you.
Commissioners, as you recall, we've been looking at ways to get involved in the electric vehicle market. As you remember, Mike Boland, Vice President of Utility Advancement, was here in March to talk about some things we're looking at. Today, he's going to update you with some new rollouts and new programs we want to offer to our customers.
Good afternoon. As Mr. Bowles just said, I was here in March, and it was a pretty long presentation. And as part of that presentation, what I talked about was the environmental advantage of electric vehicles. That if you looked at all the carbon emissions in the United States, the biggest category historically has been electric generation. And over the last decade or so, a lot of progress has been made in decarbonizing the electric generation, including TVAs. If you look at TVAs, they've made substantial progress as well. The next big sector, if you were trying to be more environmentally friendly as a nation, would be the transportation sector of the economy. And electric vehicles in particular are one area in which we can make a difference as a country in cleaning the air. We talked also about the economics of electric vehicles and about how the operating cost of an electric vehicle is superior to a gasoline vehicle as well. We also talked about how the auto manufacturers are announcing more and more electric vehicle introductions in the coming years. And as part of all those things, our desire to be part of that effort of introducing electric vehicles to the Knoxville community. So when I was there in March, I talked about how we had looked at being involved by owning and operating and constructing a fast charge electric vehicle station located at our Meadowbrook Pike or Third Creek Road CNG station. Already have a public filling station there. We were just going to add a fast charge electric vehicle station there as part of our effort to be a good steward for the community and introducing electric vehicles. As we got to looking at it at the time, we learned from industry experts it probably wasn't the best location because even a fast charge electric vehicle station takes 15 to 45 minutes to charge. That location doesn't have any facilities, any restroom facilities or anything else to do. Also at the same time when we were looking to build that station, Electrify America was in the process and actually has now completed a fast charge electric vehicle station there at Walker Springs, right between the Walmart and the Sam's. If you ever make there, they've got 4 or 5 big electric vehicle charging stations there that you can see. So we committed to go back and retool what we were thinking about doing in order to help incent the market. And I'm here today to talk about what our current recommendation is, which is to offer a rebate on residential electric charging stations. Now, the rebates on electric vehicle charging stations are common nationwide. Electric utilities across the nation really have adopted a leadership position trying to electrify the transportation market. There's a lot of different programs out there. We've looked at all the various programs to help inform us on how we did our program. At the same time, though, in the Tennessee Valley, as far as I know, as far as we can tell, there's nobody else yet that have yet started offering such a program. So I think we'll be one of the first in the valley to do that, and we're happy to do that. So let me talk a little bit about electric vehicle chargers. There's basically 3 different kinds. The first kind on your left, the level 1 charger, that's a charger where you just plug into a wall outlet over here and plug into your car, and it sort of trickle charges the car, if you will, if you know what a trickle charger is. It takes forever to charge the car, and that's the kind of charger that comes with your car. I mean, like when you buy a car, they give you one of those. I mean, it's kind of a giveaway deal. And the reference down below that says 2 to 5 miles RPH. RPH is range per hour. You can add 2 miles to your range of your car in an hour's worth of charging like that. The second kind of charging is called a level 2 charger. Level 2 charger is a charger that's powered with a 240 volt outlet. 240 volts like your dryer outlet. Think of your dryer outlet. You use that type of outlet to charge it, and it charges your car much, much faster. And that's the kind of charger that if you're really into electric vehicles, you want to have at your house. That's the kind of charger you might find in a public parking garage. That's the kind of charger you might find in front of Cracker Barrel or other merchants around that are trying to be EV friendly, is the level 2 charger. The last category is a DC fast charger, which is the one that I talked about we considered building ourselves, that now there is an example of down at Walker Springs. There's also a Tesla specific charging station in Turkey Creek that's a fast charger as well. But it's a 480 volt, it's a very high priced, and it really is made for people that have electric vehicles that are traveling through. In other words, they're coming from Chattanooga, going to Johnson City, they come through, fill up, and move on. It's like your filling station, if you will. Whereas a level 2, level 1 may be charging stations where you're just using that to commute to work and back to home. So those are the 3 general types of stations, charging types that we're talking about. I circled a level 2 station here on purpose here, so let me talk about that. Our particular rebate that we're going to offer to our customers is to offer a $400 rebate for residential electric level 2 chargers to cover the equipment costs for the chargers. Now, if you're going to install one of these chargers in your house, there is the equipment, that is the charger equipment, then there's the installation costs. Everybody's garage doesn't have an existing 240 volt outlet in it. And so that, depending on your set of circumstances, it may be kind of costly to get one out there, maybe not. Our offer is for the equipment cost, $400. Again, we benchmark that with what other people are offering, what the current prices of these devices are, and feel like that's a fair offer. We worked hard with our communications folks, and a lot of people have great marketing minds around KUB to put together a plan to make sure the public and the community is aware of our efforts. We've put together some flyers to give to the auto dealers, to give to people that are either thinking about buying an electric vehicle or have bought an electric vehicle. We put together some broadcast and digital ads we'll be sending out there. Billboards, we're looking at that. In fact, this particular graphic right here will likely, you might see that coming to you soon on a billboard, I would say. And then social media, we're into Instagram and everything else seems like nowadays. So our idea is to get this out to the public and promote this deal in all the ways that younger people now promote things. So, and with that, my last slide is really a video that I think that we'll be using as an advertising, and you might see that coming soon as well. So let me play that for you here.
One of the most effective ways to reduce your carbon footprint and can even save you money. Here at KUB, we want to help you do both. For KUB's EV Charger Rebate, we offer customers a rebate of up to $400 when they install a new home charging system for their electric vehicle. The application is easy and mobile friendly. Partner with us in planning for the future and making Knoxville and surrounding counties a sustainable place to live, work, and play. To learn more, visit KUB.org.
So with that, I'd be happy to answer your questions.
I don't have questions, but a comment. I'm really glad we're participating in this. I'm glad we're taking the lead in it. I think it speaks to our values. This is really good, especially since nobody else is doing it in the valley. I think it's really great for us to show the way. So, congratulations.
Thank you.
Question. So these fast chargers, they have a charger that I guess comes with the car that's a slower charger, and this is a quicker one. I'm confused as to how it increases the load. Didn't it just speed up the same load?
More
convenient?
these electric vehicles are basically has an electric motor with a battery.
Right.
And you can charge that battery fast, or you can charge that battery slow. Like on my iPhone, I got little chargers, and I got, the original iPhone charger charges really fast. So if you got those old style chargers, they'll really charge your iPhone. But it's really the speed in which they fill your battery up. That's
Right.
the difference in these three types of chargers.
Yeah.
And so that is the difference. The speed in which they fill up the battery is also a function of the electrical infrastructure needed to speed that up. So a 110 outlet can only put out so much power at a certain rate. You take a 240 volt like your dryer, it'll put out a whole lot more power at the same time period. And you get a fast charger, it puts out so much power that it will actually get hot. The cord going to your car will get hot because there's so much power flowing through there. And actually have to cool those things from time to time. So it's really about the speed in which the batteries recharge.
So there's an extra load that comes.
There's an extra load, there's extra demand on our power system associated with the EVs, and particularly the fast chargers. There's an extra load associated with that. As a matter of fact, the fast charge EV stations at Walmart, they're actually going back and I think retrofitting their own battery on that station so that they don't have to have the load on our system. They can have from their battery to the car battery. So there's still a little bit of finessing or learning by the whole industry at this point that's occurring, and we're seeing it real time.
Are each of those fast charge, there's, of course, there's one in the parking lot back here and all over. Are those all individually metered?
Not necessarily individually metered, but they're all metered.
They're all metered.
But right now, with the exception of the fast charge stations there at Walmart, pretty much all of them around town right now are free to the person that's plugging into them. Generally speaking, it's done as a convenience, either by the merchants or by, in the case of, we have some at the parking garage at Promenade. It's just part of our offering. Those are not fast chargers. Those are the level 2 chargers. They're semi-fast. How about a slow, semi-fast, and fast? It's a semi-fast charger is what a level 2 charger is. So, but if you own a vehicle, if you owned an EV, you would like to have a level 2 semi-fast charger in your garage. Is what you would like to have. So that we're wanting to help promote the market.
To answer your question, all those chargers are being paid, the energy use is being paid by somebody.
Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe the city of Knoxville in the garage, or whoever, or maybe Blink is charging their customer and passing that cost on to us and their bill. So
Then there were a bunch of Blink,
They're
and
Blink,
then
yeah.
I saw them, a lot of them were removed.
Yeah, Blink's kind of gone up and down. There's a new company called ChargePoint that's kind of taken over that market. So you'll start seeing that name a lot more in Knoxville.
Right.
But but they do pay KUB or whoever they buy their power from. So they are metered, but it may be a different structure how they recoup their costs.
Great, thank you.
And before I stop out, I want to do like John did. I want to introduce Chastity Gilliam over here. Chastity, raise your hand there. She actually was the team leader that brought this rebate effort about, so I want to make sure she had a chance to be introduced. So, thank you.
And Mike, you may have said, but I either missed it or my memory is not going back that far a few minutes ago.
Okay.
When do you expect to roll this out?
Oh, I'm sorry, it's already live. It went live. It's live right now, today.
Okay.
So anybody in the audience or any of you that want to try to apply for one, you should be able to go to KUB.org and be on the home page and ready for you to click.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to move on to other business. Commissioner Parker, you have a nominating committee report?
Yes. Commissioners, the nominating committee met today to begin this year's process for nominating candidates for the commissioner term that begins on January 1. Chair Hamilton's term expires this year, but our board members are eligible to serve 2 terms, and she has graciously agreed to be considered for reappointment. The application is available on KUB's website, at www.kub.org or by calling KUB. Applications should be submitted by 5 p.m. on Thursday, September 12, 2019. The city charter requires that 5 or more candidates be nominated at the October meeting for transmittal to the mayor for final selection and confirmation by city council. That's it.
Okay.
Mark's he gotta close, you gotta figure out one
My
detail.
memory's failing as well. Even though Debbie wrote me this big green note over here, I'm still failing to. Back to the bonds, we do have available for board review and for public review, anyone from the public, the final official statement for the bonds. So I wanted to mention that. It also has a description of the details of all the cost of issuance in there as well in a separate report. And it will be posted on our website after today's meeting, along with my presentation as well. So,
And we would say if you're going to the website to read it, it's not a short read, so allow yourself
800
some
pages.
time.
But it's really interesting.
All right.
I'd like my hard copy.
We are going to move on and hear from members of the public who would like to address the board. Our procedures allow guests to have up to 5 minutes to make your comments. When there is 1 minute remaining, there's a light on the podium. The yellow light on the podium timer will go on, and when your time is up, the red light will go on. We have 2 individuals that have signed up to speak. The first one is Jonathan Overly.
Good afternoon, board. Good to see some friendly faces, Jerry and Sarah. I just wanted to come and talk a little bit about the EBSE program. So as those 2 folks know, since about 2001, I started a group called the East Tennessee Clean Fuels Coalition, and we were trying to get mostly fleets, and years ago there wasn't a lot of individual involvement in it, looking at different alternatives to gasoline and diesel. So we have different fleets throughout the community in Tennessee that use natural gas, propane, electric vehicles, biodiesel and ethanol, or other biofuels that you may like or not, depending on what you've read and heard. But electric vehicles are coming on really strong right now. You've probably seen some in the community. Raise your hand if you've seen a Tesla or a car that you didn't know what it was and like, wow, that's kind of cool looking. And one of the things I wanted to offer today, if you all are ever interested, one of the things that our coalition does is set up ride and drives in the community. We would love to have an electric vehicle ride and drive for the board if you all are ever interested. But in short, as we try to figure out how to get cleaner vehicles into our community, electric vehicles are one of those things that are a huge opportunity. And when you have a mass of community citizens, it can have a significant air quality impact in the community. As you may know, for many years we were non-attainment. We were not meeting federal EPA guidelines for ozone formation and for PM 2.5, those fine particulates that are in the air. We've moved into now meeting those regulations, but we want to keep moving forward improving air quality. I don't know about any of you all, I've never had any health issues, and so I'm happy for that. But I know other people that have asthma and other issues that even today still recognize issues depending on the day and the weather. But this program is a great way to incentivize electric vehicle adoption. It's not a huge amount of money, but between the multiple little costs that you may see in trying to acquire an electric vehicle and use it, this offers some savings. And so, and as Mike was pointing out, there are a lot of electric utilities across the country that are offering incentive programs like this, and they vary across the country. But this is a nice, simple start to try to figure out how can we get people reducing pollution in Knoxville at the tailpipe. So we fully want to support and help. Love the logo. That's Instagram ready, man. That is ready to rock and roll right there.
Thank you, Chastity.
We want to support and help. Obviously, this is something I do because the coalition I run is trying to put these in use. But the reason I started the nonprofit is to try and help human health in East Tennessee and in Knoxville. So we're fully behind it. We want to help in any way we can. And I just wanted to say that the last thing I'll point out, from doing an analysis of an electric vehicle about 6 or 7 years ago in the TVA grid and using TVA's grid mix at the time. The numbers I saw, if you take a Nissan Leaf, an all-electric small car, and a regular gasoline car that gets 22, 23 miles per gallon at the time, and compared those two, you would have about a 49% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions and a 46% reduction in the total life cycle energy used to be able to make, move, and use that power. Now, TVA since then has reduced their coal content more as natural gas and some cleaner sources have come online, so that has probably only gotten better. Now, that's talking about a greenhouse gas and energy savings perspective, not necessarily the criteria pollutants that are important to us in the community, like NOx and PM. But we have numbers like that if you ever want to see that, to talk about how electric vehicles impact and reduce those emissions as well. Thank you.
Next, we have Kent Minot.
Well, great to see you, Commissioners. I'm excited. Those were great presentations, really. I can't tell you. Hey, will you come to our electric car and give a presentation? I suppose I'm not supposed to directly address any of the staff. I'm sorry. No, it's actually good. I stopped myself. I was about to run over and hug Mr. Walker for freezing the fixed fees. But yeah, this is just a great day in the history of the utility. I really think so. And I want to just congratulate everybody for it. And boy, I now have to edit my remarks as I go along here, because I was going to recommend that you do many of the things you've just done. But it's also, I think, a significant time in the history of our city as well. And I don't know if any of you came to the climate concert on June 29th. If you did, I want to thank you for that. We had a great time. I made a lot of new friends in the music community. One of them, my friend Maggie Longmire, got an electric car. She was inspired by the concert to do so. And I want to thank CEO Bullis as well for coming to the mayoral candidate forum on energy on June 29th in the Square Room. At that night, Knoxville made it pretty clear that we want clean energy and we want to go for it big. I've had stimulating conversations with the candidates since, both immediately after and the days following. They seem energized to deal with the climate in a big way. Almost as a confirmation, this past Tuesday, City Council unanimously passed the climate resolution to get us to 80% greenhouse gas reduction by 2050. That's community-wide, not just governmental operations. The resolution mandates the council and the new mayor put together a plan to achieve that ambitious goal. So hence my comments today. How do we strategize a steep drop in carbon emissions and make the elements of that strategy a benefit to the citizens of Knoxville? Now, we know it's theoretically possible because we've joined other parts of the country in decoupling economic growth from carbon emissions. In regular language, we don't have to burn stuff to be prosperous. Now, during a previous comment, I introduced an article pointing out something that you just pointed out, Mr. Bowen. Transportation electrification is a tremendous boon to a utility. Why not? An electric car is roughly half a house in terms of electrical consumption. Every new EV bumps up your income. And this is the part where I have to jump because you've already said it, Mr. Bowen. But well, let's not stop at personal transportation. The electric buses that will soon be deployed along Sutherland point the way to a potentially enormous new account. Let's ask KAT to commit to complete electrification of the bus system by some certain date. Other cities around the country have already done this. My favorite is LA's effort to deploy battery electric garbage trucks. Garbage trucks are great for electrification because they stop and go. Electric vehicles are much better at that than internal combustion engines. Now, when this strategy, excuse me, produces income, as the Fortune magazine article suggests, this would give KUB a big financial lever to help green up other elements of the economy. Now, it's frequently said the cheapest way to reduce carbon emissions is megawatts, energy we stop using. Why not find ways to use the new revenue to provide funding for a rejuvenated KEEM program? There's a long list of low-income residents who want energy efficiency upgrades, and once we seriously reduce demand, we can press TVA to put another coal-fired plant into early retirement and ask them for a rate reduction on that as well. I suggested a different use for the new income at an earlier meeting, namely getting rid of those fixed fees. But again, you just did that for us, Mr. Walker. Thank you very much. This points, though, to a final element of a green strategy, creating a rate structure. What have I got, 43 seconds. Creating a rate structure that encourages conservation and efficiency. I've sent you all by email a couple of reports about doing that. What would be an environmentally just rate structure. Councilwoman Seema Singh was right here making this point at the last board meeting in June. Supported, well, we want KUB to be secure, while at the same time joining us citizens in reducing consumption or to reduce greenhouse gases. Now, briefly, if I got, no, I won't read it. It's a paragraph from that report saying that fixed fees are regressive and getting into the 21st century means eliminating them. But anyway, thank you so much. It's a very exciting day. Great to be here.
Thank you. All right. There's no one else that was signed up. I don't think we have anyone else from the public to speak. Okay. Following the adjournment of this meeting, the board will have a lunch session across the hall that is open for the public to observe. This meeting is now adjourned.